I'll call to order the May 5th City Council regular meeting and ask those in the audience who would like to join myself and the council in the Pledge of Allegiance to please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is audience comments. Let me just say that citizens' comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions that we make. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment will have that opportunity to do so this evening. I would like to point out that on our consent calendar is Agenda Bill 6818, the Talus parcels 7 through 9 plat, and that is a quasi-judicial matter, and the agenda bill that appears on our agenda this evening is a referral to the Council Land and Shore Committee meeting. And since it is a quasi-judicial matter, and the council acts more as a judge in that, we will be considering the recommendation from the Urban Village Development Commission once they have finished their deliberations and forward that to the council for our review. Our guidelines for public participation: when recognized, please come to the lectern and speak into the microphone. State your name, address, your relationship to the city, a resident, property owner, a business owner, whatever. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. If you have written comments, please submit those to the clerk. And remember to address your comments to the full council and not to individual members. I'd like to reiterate that citizens' comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process. Again, we take those comments seriously, and we thank members of the public for taking the time to address us during our meetings. So with that introduction, has anyone signed up to speak this evening?
I have several. So these would be for individuals that are not speaking to the Talus parcel. That's correct. Okay. So if I read your name and it pertains to that and you'd like to pass, just acknowledge that. So Amy McGinnis.
I am actually speaking in general terms, not about a specific proposal that does anything regarding Talus. Understanding that no action is happening tonight on that.
Is it with respect to parcels 7, 8, and 9?
With respect to parcel 7.
Okay. And so let me look to our city attorney and ask him to respond to that question.
Well, I think it might be best to just allow you to proceed, but just the ground rules, as the mayor explained, is that the plat of Talus parcels 7, 8, and 9 is a quasi-judicial matter. The council must decide this on the basis of the record that's created at the UVDC. They may not talk with citizens or the developer or anybody else for that matter about it. So that includes public comment. So if your comments relate to the plat that's before the UVDC, that would not be appropriate. If you're talking about, you know, tree cutting or something like that, that would be. Or the annexation of the area up there is appropriate topic, or things in general, but not related to the quasi-judicial matter that's before the city right now. Sure,
Yeah. If you could state your name and your address for the record as well.
So my name is Amy McGinnis, and I am a resident of Talus for the last 7 years. And I, first of all, want to thank Mayor Butler and the rest of the City Council for taking these comments and using them however is the appropriate way to use them. So I will say in advance, disregard what you should disregard. I did want to share with you a philosophy of Talus that I hope you'll bear in mind as you make decisions yet to come. And I want to say right off the bat that I understand that many decisions about parcel 789 have already been made and cannot be unmade. I missed the boat in not being in here earlier on some decisions, and that's my own fault. So with whatever there is left to decide, that's what I'm hoping to help you consider. So what I would like to do, first of all, if it's okay, is actually just pass around the drawing that we were given in 2006 as to what Talus would look like built out, and just let you see.
Yeah, let's start with the city attorney first.
So what I think you'll recognize on there is the huge water tower that is there. What I think you'll also see is the development at that top part of our mountain that is 5-acre parcels, which is what we were told would be there anyway. And I would like to read to you just briefly from this brochure that was being given to all residents of Talus and in all neighborhoods at that time, people shopping there. Understanding the importance of protecting the portal to the Issaquah Alps, a decade was spent working diligently with environmental groups and the city of Issaquah to create an ecologically sensitive plan for Talus that would preserve the integrity of this meaningful place. Rather than forcing Talus to be something it doesn't want to be, this thoughtful community took its cues from the land and embraced a philosophy of authenticity. So this is in our heads, and I contrast that with a proposal, I think that Okay. So I would just ask you to make that contrast for yourself as to what's being proposed. Offering an alternative to new urbanism, Talus champions the concept of a natural mountain habitat that feels like a forest retreat. For people who call Talus home, each day brings the serenity and surprise of being in the mountains. It's what life in a sanctuary is all about, and that feeling of well-being is carried throughout the homes. Tucked carefully into a rich tapestry of woodlands, Talus offers a mix of living environments designed to make the most of natural materials and views. From estate apartments to townhomes to single-family homes, there's something for everyone with a passion for the outdoors. Talus residents will look out at nature rather than their neighbors. This one developer told us the idea is to emulate Whistler of residences that are scattered along the existing topography, and anyway, that's what we were led to expect. I would also like you to consider, as you are thinking about further financial burden on residents already in Talus, just to share with you my family's personal situation. In 2006, our Talus Homeowners Association dues were $388.08. In 2014, our dues are $972.72, which is pretty close to a 250% increase in 7 years. So I think you can understand our concern about additional responsibilities with regard to what structures go into Talus. How am I doing? Okay. And finally, I would like to urge you to consider that as it stands right now, there is a one-lane exit out of Talus, and as density gets greater, I've heard it said that the other opening road that's on the books but not being done over to Newport Way, that's not a consideration, but I would ask you to just consider that as more and more houses go in, with natural disasters, with a senior center set to double in size. I worry about emergency vehicles getting in and out on a one-lane exit, and the rest of us in some kind of dire situation. So Thank you very much for your time.
Is Cynthia Lesford interested in speaking?
So I'd like to also agree with what Amy said, is that we live in a very nice society with a lot of trees, and
Cynthia,
yes, I'm sorry.
could you state your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry,
please?
Cynthia Lesford, 2408 Northwest Harmony Way.
Thank you.
And I agree with Amy that we live in a very nice society with a lot of trees around. We feel like we are in the forest. And I'm very concerned that, to pick my words, that I don't want my area to look like the Highlands, where it's completely been clear-cut and flat. In the development, Talus Development Agreement, the goal number 1, design an urban village community with an overall mountain village character that reflects the site elements of Cougar Mountain. Generally, mountain village character describes site planning and design that adapts to and reflects the physical characteristics of the land. The location of buildings should be considered the national elements of the site, stepping up hillsides and taking in views and lighting into account. Now, I live in the Bridges, and the Bridges are that way. Our homes are on the hill. It's a steep hill. It's a small road. We go very slow. But it is a very nice community. I'm very worried about this annexation that is coming in because there's only one way off the hill, and that is to come down through. We have some beautiful 100-foot trees, conifer trees, that are lined up on top of the hill. And I'm worried that those will be cut down. I'd like to have a guarantee that those would not. They're very beautiful up there. To have this annexation be connected into our community with one road, we could see that we could have a highway coming up above us and coming down our street to go into Talus. We already have some congestion at Talus and Shangri-La Way. Luckily, the Bridges don't have many people now. Most people come from the other side. But when we are trying to make our left turn to go up there, many people beat us out because they can get first in there. So I can see a huge traffic jam, which maybe 10 years down the line with all the homes going in might put a traffic light, which means that now we're not really a mountain community. I really wish for you to think about the expansion. If you've been up into those trees, they're beautiful. They've been there a long time. I've learned in Talus that it takes, 10 seconds to cut down a tree, but it takes years to grow it. And to take down those trees and put homes up there and flatten out the community of Talus would really destroy what we have in the community that we have bought into. Thank you.
Scott Pfeiffer?
My name is Scott Pfeffer. I'm a resident of Talus at 2444 Northwest Stony Creek Drive. I'll apologize in advance. I was blending 789 and the future annexation together in my comments because I have a concern about the order of development presently with all that's known as to be accomplished. But I am a licensed architect with 30 years of experience, including 15 years negotiating neighborhood developments between school districts and developers. So I have a little bit of understanding about what's about to be imposed in front of us. Currently, I believe the planning process is out of order and that the present future development includes a large area not originally intended within the Talus development. It would be prudent to plan for this additional area within the current design. I do not see signs of roadway and utilities planning to handle the additional traffic that will be generated, and I do not see signs the accommodations of additional student populations will be addressed within the development. I'm concerned about the overall character of our neighborhood being created by the proposed developments and our loss of our mountainside community. In my opinion, the developments are more in creation of a mountaintop village towering above those below without any integration between new construction and natural setting. I disagree with some staff comments about the acreage set aside within Talus compensates and negates the assault. What it creates is a disjointed community of varied character. half of us living within harmony with nature and the other half standing out like an eyesore. I disagree with staff comments. I'll jump that one. I have a serious concern related to additional maintenance that will be associated with a lot of the development, in that these will all be passed off to those of us within Talus, and I don't believe that our HRA is experienced for managing large maintenance right now. We're currently struggling with the maintenance costs that we have, and it's clear would be a problem to add this burden to us, and it would just simply result in increased fees and massive assessments. I have significant concerns regarding safety and additional traffic that will be developed and added to Shangri-La Way. Shangri-La Way is a roadway that develops heavy frost and becomes slippery most mornings in the winter. In the proximity of the water tower, the road is very steep and has insufficient radii to negotiate without difficulty when slippery. The combination of steep slope and abrupt radii result in difficulties during winter weather, resulting in many cars not being able to maneuver the roadway safely. As a result, vehicles are often stranded at the bottom of the hill unless one chooses to face the risk of accident creeping down the hillside. Most of us in Bridges neighborhood have learned to stay home until the weather gets better. The added development of the parcels I'm not supposed to talk about and the annexation combined will result in the occupants.
Mr. Pfeiffer, if you could restrict your remarks to the annexation, that would be
Okay, so
appreciated.
the annexation of 350 more homes will leave us stranded on a hillside away from our home until road conditions improve during weather conditions, unless, of course, roadway modifications are provided. I have a final concern regarding the current traffic conditions along 900. During rush hour, 900 backs up from I-90 to May Valley, resulting in bumper-to-bumper traffic for several miles. Adding additional traffic of 350 more homes to the one-way means of egress from our neighborhood will certainly result in an exacerbation of the problem. As a result of the issues, I am simply asking that you ask developers to go back to the drawing boards and consider all the future development being attached to the neighborhood at one point in time and not to rush it through. I find that to be an imprudent use of planning. Thank you.
Again, for items that don't relate to Talus 7, 8, and 9, I have two others on the list, Tony Lefedre and Latond, is that it? And followed by Karen Potterfield.
Hi, my name is Tony Latond. I'm a resident of Issaquah. I live at 2408 Northwest Harmony Way. That's in the Talus area. And my main concern is really with the process that's going on. With this annexation looming, we have kind of a split where there doesn't seem to be any coordination. In the Development Commission for 789, we're not allowed to talk about annexation, but then for annexation, we're not allowed to talk about 789. So, but yet, I do believe the two are related. And to have a reasonable plan to go forward, there has to be some coordination between those two efforts. And so far, we seem to be kind of shut out from participating in that coordination. Thank you.
Karen Potterfield.
Hi, Karen Porterfield, 2498 Northwest Stony Creek Drive. I am both a resident and a property owner. So, as Mitt Romney so famously said when he got off the plane in Michigan, the trees are the right size here. Well, he didn't say it well, but we know what he meant to say. We choose the communities we live in based on so many important things, whether it's Bremerton or Wenatchee, the Issaquah Highlands or Talus. There's something that said this was home. And we responded to it and we chose to live there. Sadly, with the proposed annexation that we are talking about above Talus, everything that made it home for us has the potential of being lost. We moved to Talus because we love the mountain zoning. One of my best friends lives in the Issaquah Highlands because she says she loves the feel of that traditional neighborhood and likes the fact that her kids get to grow up with kids down the street. So we make those choices. putting in 350 more houses in Tallis goes against everything that we moved there for. Just this week in the paper, we read about the new trails that are opening up on Tiger Mountain. Last year, we celebrated the ability to purchase the additional land on Squawk Mountain. We have in our backyard Cougar Mountain, and I know that the park there has been working hard to buy that land on the top to expand the park and create even a bigger play area for all of us. I also know that they've been stymied in these past, I believe it was 14 to 16 months, in trying to purchase some of that land because property owners now see the opportunity to sell it for an annexation. And of course, this is America, we love it, maximize their ability to get return on the dollar. But this is where we have to make our choices. Do we want to expand a park? Do we want to have annexation? Well, all of us in Tallis, of course, we're voting no to annexation. We have waited behind the school buses. We've waited behind all our neighbors as we leave for work. We know what it's like to come off the freeway here and get onto 900, and we're lucky. We get the first exit off when we turn to go up the hill, everybody going down 900. Well, expand that. Expand that significantly by both what is being proposed to be built in 7, 8, and 9, and the annexation. When you add that up, we're looking at close to 500 more houses. And if you assume that most of those houses have 2 cars, we're 2-car families, and we're going to work in the morning, all of a sudden you've added more than 2,000 trips up and down that road on a work day basis. And if we think it's bad to get up and down that road now, just add those extra cars in. And as Scott said, we also know that there are days getting down that road from Tallis can be challenging. While we appreciate what the city does to plow that street when it snows, heavy frosts, it's tricky. A lot of people are walking and a lot of people stay home. That's not even talking about getting emergency vehicles up. So I hope as we're having this conversation around the annexation that we'll respond to our first 2 speakers tonight who talked about what the founding of Tallis was. The agreement that was created between the city, the community, and the environmentalists. I think it's important that we honor that we live with the agreement we have, and that we look to fit in any future development within those parameters that we all agreed to as we started the Tallis development. One last thing that I'd like to leave you with that you may not be aware of if you don't live in Tallis, as part of the HOA agreement, we as homeowners do get a vote. However, the commercial side has more than 50% of the vote. So we could all show up and vote no. We don't want to accept some of these responsibilities. The commercial does not even have to vote, and it will not pass.
30 seconds remaining. 30
Excuse me?
seconds.
Thank you. Because by our bylaws, we have to have a 2/3 vote to either to accept something or to say no. And so we could be in a very awkward situation of the homeowners not wanting this and yet not being in a position to have this vote. So I hope you keep all these pieces in mind as you ponder what your choices are ahead of you. Thank you.
There are no others signed up.
Is there anyone else in the audience desiring to comment? Mr. Kapler.
David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. You know I could talk about a lot of this stuff, but I'm hoping the city will step up to realize that the Tallis community is struggling with several things right now, and this tree thing is one of the most evident. And I'm hoping the city can figure out some ways to help the Tallis community deal with that issue. My interest in the former East Village goes back to the Newcastle Community Plan when I was appointed in 1979, and then I followed, before I even lived in Issaquah, I followed the eastern side of Cougar Mountain especially through the Newcastle Community Plan, and then when the Tibbetts East Cougar Plan the city did, and those kinds of things. So got a lot of history with the east side of Cougar Mountain, even more so than with Grand Ridge area. And that urban village But I think we need to be doing some things to help the community balance some of these things out and get them functioning better as a community. I'm concerned for the long-term, what real estate values and desirability. People really do the research now, and they don't. If they go to Talus now, they're going to be turned off. They're going to see stuff we don't really want them, that should not be representative of what's going on in Talus. We need a very important urban village, a very important part of our city, and the city needs to be more proactive in helping that community get some things figured out. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience desiring to speak?
Good evening. My name is David Hoffman. 335 116th Avenue Southeast in Bellevue is my address. It's actually my work address, and I'm here representing the Master Builders Association, here not to talk about Talus or any of the issues, the many issues going on up there, but here to speak to item number 7 on your agenda this evening under regular business, the transportation concurrency impact mitigation fees. You're all going to be discussing, and it looks like moving to authorize an expenditure of funds to continue that study and work on the impact fees. We have, actually I want to compliment staff on keeping us informed, keeping me informed as a representative of the MBA on this issue. We look forward to working with you all here and with staff on this issue. I just wanted to stop in tonight and compliment you all on that and say we look forward to working with you. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience desiring to speak this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is Darren Pugh. I represent Talus Management Services. My address is 22430 Southeast 231st in Maple Valley. Just briefly, I know there's been a lot of discussion reference the annexation request that we have introduced. My comments are simply that, I think we understand and council understands, and hopefully the public understands that this is a lengthy process that will undertake quite a bit of review, certainly. But I think all of the comments that I've heard, and I just want to point out some general inaccuracies. There's an assumption that I think was generated through the Issaquah Press article regarding the amount of available density that is left within Talus. Certainly the annexation request and the information that we provided relative to that request does not propose to include 350 homes in the annexation area. So I think there's a huge misconception that's being portrayed as to what the real proposal is there. So I look forward to working through that process and hopefully educating the public and Talus residents as to really what is going to be proposed there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience desiring to speak? Anyone else desiring to speak? Third and final call. Anyone else desiring to speak this evening? Seeing no one, audience comments are closed, and we'll move now to committee and regional reports. Councilmember Milligan.
Thank you. I have no report tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Pauley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had sent a package around on Friday to the council looking for some preliminary comments or input on the King Conservation District's draft work plan for 2015 and draft budget for 2015. And I thought I would just talk for a couple of minutes about it and see if I can collect any comments tonight from the group. In 2013, the KCD regrouped with its stakeholders to review its current programs and the county's needs. KCD programs are required to impact the following natural resource priorities in the public benefit: aquatic habitat, water quality and quantity, agriculture and farmlands, forest lands, upland habitat, and economic support for working lands. They spent this year in review and yielded several reports with recommendations for program improvements and program expansions. The two themes that came out of this new program, first is to protect and enhance the local food economy through infrastructure development and direct assistance, as well as protecting rural lands. And the second part is recognizing the tapestry of natural resources that exist within the urban boundaries and how it meshes and overlaps with the whole, and identify some new KCD programs and the best support for natural resource stewardship across our county. So the advisory committee that they've recently set up has been collecting feedback from different members of the committee, and I'm coming back to the Issaquah City Council asking if there is on this draft program anything anybody would like to share tonight that I'll be able to take back to the next executive session of the advisory committee, which I believe is this week on Wednesday. And just to give you a little bit more schedule, eventually I'm doing this as an alternate for the Sound Cities Association. They will be taking this to the PIC, and Councilmember Martz represents us there, and so there will be a fine-tuned version of the draft that I sent you next week. I think the PIC meeting is next Wednesday. So any comments I can get tonight is great, but you will have more opportunities to comment as this moves its way through the PIC and through the advisory committee. So if it's appropriate, I'd like to get some comments back.
Great. So I would encourage any council members that have comments to share those with Councilmember Pauley. If not at this time, following the meeting. Councilmember Barber.
I had the opportunity to review this, and I have a couple of thoughts as I was going through here. There is under current budget where they're talking about some possible new programs. There's like 6 bullets. And the first one, they all talk about adding positions. The first one is add 3 positions, add a few positions, add new staff, add 3 additional people. I quickly got through there, so they're talking about 9 positions. And so I think the first would be a very cautionary note that is not sure how they're planning to phase this in. But also, I always feel that it's best that all of these dollars go more towards a product or an end result, and sometimes we put a lot of into the payroll and making sure that it's balanced appropriately, that it's going to the projects. Duplication of work plans, there was a couple of them that seemed to be somewhat of a duplication of work plans, and just making sure that there's going to be a value that's provided from a lot of these. There's some of these that I think the couple of them where they're actually going to a project of expanding, like repairing habitat and working towards those things where it's something you can actually see, and it's going to definitely impact improvements. So probably would be more if I spend a little bit more time reading through it, but that's the quick, and I'll get back to you if
You'll
I
have another chance. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you. I, too, reviewed the material that you sent. Thanks for sending that. And I would echo the comments that Councilmember Barber had. And also, I'm not sure she said this. If she did, I missed it. I think the proposal is to bump it up from $5 to the $10 maximum. And so that would have me concerned because once you add staff, then the next bump up requires some kind of an increase in that assessment, if you will.
That's an excellent point. That came up today in our discussions as well, that if you go right to the maximum, you have no way to handle those adjustments as they come in the future.
Right.
But I will reiterate that.
And I too saw all the added staff, and that concerned me.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no one else desiring to comment on that topic, Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council Land and Shore Committee will meet next Tuesday, May 13th at 6 p.m. here in Chambers. Pending approval of tonight's consent agenda, we will be looking at Agenda Bill 6818, Talus Parcel 789 Preliminary Plat, Agenda Bill 6821, Review of Bids for Surplus Property. And then I'll also mention Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee will meet next Wednesday, May 14th at 7 p.m. I'll mention on that KCD issue, so the way that PIC works is that typically we get 2 reviews of any particular issue before us. So we have a preliminary review, which allows me to then speak intelligently to the issue, and then to you all, and then I can get your all feedback, and then I can speak intelligently back as to how our council feels. That's my understanding of how this issue will work. However, we do upon occasion have emergency actions, and we will actually be considering emergency action on Puget Sound Clean Air Agency's proposed rate increase. They are considering a 44% increase. Unfortunately, the information that would allow me to speak intelligently on this issue arrived at 5:11 this evening, and so I have not had a chance to fully review it. As this issue is coming before the pick next Wednesday, I would ask any of you, if you take a look at that material and have any feedback that you wish to share with me, if you could let me know by midday next Wednesday, I would sure appreciate it. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Scherer.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to members of the viewing public. The Council Infrastructure Committee will next meet on Thursday, May 15th at 5:30 p.m. in the Pickering Room at City Hall Northwest. The agenda has not currently been scheduled. We were going to have a discussion involving transit options in light of the Proposition 1 defeat, but to answer a question from Mr. Bush that I never got back to him on, we're going to defer that issue, I believe, to the following month at the June meeting, as there may be some additional feedback at the upcoming council goal-setting retreat. So the remainder of the infrastructure agenda has not yet been scheduled, but watch the website for that information concerning the 15th. On a related note, the Eastside Transportation Partnership will be meeting this Friday, May 9th, and that's at the Redmond Silver Cloud Inn, a change from our normal Bellevue location. That will have a discussion of post-election King County transportation impacts, and so we'll be talking with King County Metro's General Manager and Road Services Director about the county's plans and how they relate to various East Side cities, including ours. We will also have a Regional Transit Coordination Report from the Puget Sound Regional Council, PSRC, and some reports concerning our strategic planning session, which again, talking about delay, was supposed to have occurred in June, but ETP leadership is likely going to move that to the second Friday in July for a half-day retreat that will likely be held in Redmond. So I'll be providing more information on that as it becomes available. That concludes my reports.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. I have two reports this evening. The first is WIRA 8 Management Committee meeting met on May 1st. After reviewing and discussing the budget and the work plan, it was recommended to increase the WIRA 8 interlocal agreement cost share by 5% for 2015. And just, it sounds big, but it's only $568. So, and then the second one is to recommend the adoption of the proposed 2015 budget, including the 5% increase for the interlocal agreement cost share. And our third was to adopt the proposed 2015 WIRA 8 staff work plan. So that was the WIRA committee meeting. And the next one I'd like to report on is Council Services and Safety. We met on May 1st. We had 3 items before us. The first was a skate park proposed site. We reviewed that and we'll be bringing it back to the full council on May 19th. The next one is a cemetery maintenance fee increase, and this is a $50 increase for internment fees, and this is simply to cover additional operational costs. That is also coming back on May 19th. The third item we looked at was consideration to establish a salary commission, and that will be coming back for discussion on June 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodman.
No report.
Council President Winterstein.
Thank you. A reminder to my colleagues on the council that a week from tonight we'll be having our work session, and we will be reviewing the goals that you submitted. And we've got the way the agenda is laid out is that we're going to all the 17 goals will be presented, and there is a staff person who's been assigned as a lead to each one of them, and we put on the agenda for the staff person to do the presentation. So if you feel you want to be sure you're on the same page with the staff person doing the presenting your goal, you might want to reach out to that person and make sure ahead of time. And we do that just for simplicity's sake. So there's one person, presenting both the original goal proposal and the staff response. That meeting will be, there's 17, and we're not setting up a lot of time for a lot of dialogue. The purpose is to initial introduction and the staff response of every one of the goals. And then, of course, later on Saturday, the 17th, we will have our retreat to settle upon those. And council member Sher, you will not be there Monday. So please, if you want to talk with me or somebody else about any special comments or thoughts that you want to share next Monday, just let us know. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Under the mayor's report, there will not be an executive session this evening. If you're looking for a job and are between the ages of 16 and 24, mark your calendar. The inaugural Issaquah Job Fair will be held in the Pickering Barn on May 28th from 2 to 5 p.m. Whether you're searching for the perfect summer job or hoping to jumpstart your career, find the right position for you at the Issaquah Job Fair. Issaquah is now competing with Puyallup and Redmond in Puget Sound Energy's 2014 Take Charge Green Power Challenge to see which city can claim the title of greenest town in the Puget Sound. Each city has set a goal to see how many additional homes and businesses sign up for Puget Sound Energy's Green Power program, which allows PSE electric customers to pay a little more to guarantee some or all of their energy is from clean, renewable sources. For more information, please visit pse.com/GPC challenge. That's pse.com/GPC challenge. Get ready to hit the road at the Kids Bike Rodeo. Join us at Pickering Barn from 9 a.m. to noon on Sunday, May the 18th this year for free bike safety checks and helmet fittings, a bike safety and skill course, music, raffles, refreshments, and more. And I'm not sure how much more that is, but it looks like there's a pretty full schedule events. For more information, visit recologycleanscapes.com/store. That's RECOLOGY Cleanscapes, all one word, .com/store. There's still time for you to provide input on what the council's 2015 goals should be. An important part of the goal-setting process involves feedback from our community. So please visit our website, issaquahwa.gov, and take a couple of minutes to complete our survey before May the 11th. And thank you for your participation. That concludes the mayor's report. We'll now move to the consent calendar. And what is your pleasure on the consent? Oh, excuse me. Have the the payrolls and receipts been reviewed?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That's an important part for the viewing audience. Two council members, each council meeting review the accounts payables and payroll to familiarize them where your money is going, and that typically generates a number of questions which staff responds to. So that has been reviewed this evening. What is your pleasure on the consent calendar? Councilmember Winterstein.
I'm going to request that we actually pull Agenda Bill 6823 off consent down to regular business.
Okay. We will move Agenda Bill 6823 down to regular business. That will become item number 7B. And with that.
Yeah, and I then move that we approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none? Oh, excuse me. You can. Councilmember Milligan.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to just comment on process about the way that the potential annexation area in the Talus area is playing a part in the UVDC considerations. I understand that in an SDP, the Urban Village Development Commission has final approval, but this is a preliminary plat, and it comes to us for full approval. And it appears that the potential annexation area is a part of the discussion. And I just didn't know where that should come, what kind of guidance the city provides, and just didn't quite know what to do with that. I'm a little new at this side of the hall, having served on the other side for so long, so I just thought I'd bring that up. Since the annexation area is only potential and may never be annexed, and how might that play into the process?
The potential annexation area is on the docket for a proposed comp plan amendment that will be considered, and final action on that particular item on the docket is anticipated to be June or July of 2015. So that is a long, drawn-out process and will undergo considerable public review and discussion and transparency. Does that help? So now back to the consent calendar. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, that carries unanimously. Moving now to regular business, Agenda Bill 6720. This is coming back from the Infrastructure Committee, and I believe there's a staff presentation. Charlie Bush.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We've got a brief presentation with myself and Dave Favor, and Randy Young from Henderson Young is here to join us as well for questions and answers. Starting off here, this is a request for funding authorization for $140,000 to continue several processes that have previously been started. We've identified savings in our agenda bill. You'll see those detailed in there that cover the $140,000. Those are out of the 301 fund, our capital improvement fund. We need authorization for the expenditures to complete the work that we're proposing. What that work is are these 3 bullet points: transportation concurrency simplification, which is something that we talked about last fall with you in a work session, and it's the presentation from that work session is included in the agenda bill. Impact and mitigation fees, and there are 4 sources. 2 of them are related to parks. One is update of the parks impact fee. The other one is a parks non-residential impact fee. The third is update of traffic impact fees, which relates to simplified concurrency. And the fourth is a multimodal impact fee. And then the last element here is public funding strategies. This is an evaluation of public funding strategies that would look at, in the case of transportation, essentially when you have your impact fees in place, you're still going to have a gap in funding, and it would look at ways to potentially close that gap in funding for infrastructure improvements related to transportation and also related to parks. In terms of the story on a number of these may sound familiar to you as council. Last year we started work on parks impact fees, and tragically one of our staff members passed away, and the work on that was not able to be completed during last year, so we're proposing to come back and complete that this year. In addition, our traffic impact fees were in the process of update, and we ended up getting into a conversation on simplified concurrency that carried into the council last September. The result of that was some of the money allocated for traffic impact fee updates was actually spent on simplified concurrency discussion. The multimodal impact fee discussion is something that started many years ago and was put on pause for the Central Issaquah Plan process because there were a number of projects that were part of that process that feed into the multimodal impact fee, and then was put on hold again for our pedestrian and bicycle planning process, which is now complete. And so the opportunity to take a look at a multimodal impact fee is now before us. In terms of simplified concurrency, the benefits, they're consistent with the reorganization we've done in development services in terms of making things more streamlined for developers, more predictable, and also impact fee updates for transportation, and we believe simplified concurrency are really critical to helping to fund the Central Issaquah Plan. The impact and mitigation fund developments, their impacts on public improvements, basically that's how this works. So, impact fees help us to deal with the impact of development in terms of getting public improvements funded. And that's why this is important. We've had impact fees for a number of years, and this, in the case of parks and transportation, is simply an update of those fees. And then we're looking at basically how to fund the public share. That's what the public funding strategies piece is. So that additional share that's left over from transportation that I mentioned, that second 50% approximately of funding that wouldn't be made up by impact fees potentially. Or even less, or even more potentially if our impact fees end up being less. And then when it comes to our plans for the Green Necklace and the Central Issaquah Plan, as well as parks in general that we are looking to develop, the parks impact fee and the non-residential parks impact fee as well, would look at addressing those. But in addition to that, we would look at some other funding strategies that would be analyzed as a part of this proposal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Favor to take you into a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Charlie. Hello, good evening. Move right through the slides here. So you're talking about why now? Why now? There's some reasons we've been talking with you for the last while is, again, a desire to simplify and merge the concurrency process together with the traffic impact fee process. For years, that's been kind of a two-part process. We want to bring those together. Simplify, streamline it, and merge those processes together. That helps fund the capital facilities plan, which is like the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan list. So we're taking those funds and focusing on those things we want to build. It helps, like Charlie said, fund the Central Issaquah Plan improvements that have been identified. And again, it's consistent with the reorganization. And the Kaizen is the word that you may have heard, that we went through that breakdown and rebuild the permit process last June and September. We're implementing those steps, and this is a key part to help streamline, simplify a key part of the permit process. And then item 2 is there is a need, which we've been saying, to update the 3 computer models that form the traffic evaluation methodology to look at traffic in the city. They should be updated every 2 to 3 years, and they have not been updated since 2007. With the recession, we were able to borrow some time, but time is passing, and it's definitely time. Regardless of whichever methodology we choose, these computer model updates are needed. And, well, so there's that. Why now the impact fees? Likewise, the existing traffic and parks impact fees, it's been several years since those have been updated. Randy can talk more if we need to go into those specifics. So likewise, that information needs to be brought up to date. We're potentially missing some revenue with the larger projects we've anticipated coming through the door. With respect to this project, luckily some of those projects have slowed down, so we've got some time to do the work we're proposing to work on those fees. And then 2 new revenue sources that Charlie talked about have been identified that didn't exist last time the impact fees were updated. So what do we all get out of this? We get 3 updated traffic models. The first one council authorized about last year at this time, and when you said yes to $60,000 to update 1 of the 3 computer traffic models, and that work has been completed. So this money helps to fund the other 2 traffic models that are needed to form this and any computer concurrency system. We get 2 updated impact fees. We get 2 new mitigation fees we've already talked about, the simplified merged concurrency impact fee process, and then the funding strategies and the technical and policy help from Henderson Young Company, as well as Torsten Lienau of CH2M Hill and his group. The CIC committee asked specifically, show us how are you funding this package.
David, I think that was the infrastructure committee? The CIP committee you said?
CIC, I meant to say, the council
Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you. And here are 4 specific sources of the full 140,000. Question I see.
Councilmember Scherer.
Thank you. While you're on this slide, the committee was particularly interested in having that information included in the bill, and I think Councilmember Milligan primarily brought this issue up for us. I just wanted to go one step further in terms of the detail because I'm not sure I understood a couple of the items on there. So where it says Kohani budget not spent, the 2014 budget had a line item for annexation study at $120,000, and I don't think we did that or spent any of that because we didn't move forward with that. So it seems like there might be a lot more than $40,000 from that line item. And then I guess as a corollary to that, if there's only $40,000 out of that pot of money, the technology projects and employee equipment, I was wondering if we could just find out what was deferred or not spent in order to fund this instead, if you have that level of detail.
You have.
So on the Kalani budget not spent, I don't know about the macro level of that, the exact numbers. In terms of employee equipment not purchased, I believe we found some other areas to take a look at that, and in some cases have not done some hiring or are not planning to do some hiring this year. The technology projects deferred, we had looked at implementing SharePoint across the organization as an IT project, and we've done some other analysis of IT and concluded that that's not something we're going to move forward on at this time.
That answer your questions?
Close enough.
Close enough? Great. So what are the next steps? So I think it's Exhibit A, or Exhibit B is a graphic or written outline. Exhibit C in your agenda bill is a more graphic outline of this summary you see here. We've provided to you a work plan throughout this year with, I'd say, significant involvement with the council. We're planning for at least 4 work sessions with you, starting with June 9th, to work with Randy and company to work through a series of policy discussions, as well as the technical information as much as we need with council. We'll keep the CIC committee regularly updated.
Which committee?
The Council Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you.
The PPC, the Planning Policy Commission, thank you, will likely, we anticipate meeting with them in the fall, where they are required to hold a hearing and recommend to you any code updates, and we anticipate there will be some, to recommend to the full council, and October, December is when we anticipate the full package coming back to you after you've been fully informed through these many work sessions we're going to have with you. And then parallel with that path, we have been already and continue to plan to work with the business and development community. So David Hoffman was here. I see he escaped, but we plan to keep talking with him. We've talked with Matt Bott of the Chamber. In fact, right, you, Randy, and I met with the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee of the Chamber last November. We'll continue that work. And then the plan is first of next year, we roll this out. The final bullet or box down here is that this is setting up the methodology as well as the computer update work. There is always going to be this every 2 to 3 years, a budget request back to you. We hope to do it through the budget process here on out, but to ask for some amount of money, likely less than tonight, to regularly update the methodologies that we're all talking about tonight. And with that, that's our slideshow. Randy Young is here for questions, Charlie and I.
Okay, thank you. This is coming back from the Council Infrastructure Committee. Councilmember Scheer.
Thank you, Mayor. Agenda Bill 6720, I will paraphrase some of the background in the interests of time. But by way of background on this bill, the Growth Management Act requires jurisdictions to adopt a transportation concurrency plan. Concurrency is the provision of improvements such as transit facilities, streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, etc. at the time of development, or that a financial commitment is in place to complete the improvements or mitigation strategies within 6 years. The state leaves the implementation of concurrency and the adoption of a level of service to local discretion. State law authorizes cities to charge impact fees and mitigation fees to mitigate for the impacts of development upon public services. In 2012, significant decisions led the city to re-examine whether concurrency and impact fees remained consistent with city direction. The city reorganized departments to move towards streamlining regulations and processes. As we adopted the Central Issaquah Plan with a vision to develop the commercial core into a small-scale, mixed-use, urban, pedestrian-oriented environment. Parallel with these policy decisions, our computer models were in need of update. There's an Issaquah Municipal Code which requires the model to be updated in periodic terms from time to time. It's meant to be such as every 2 to 3 years, and as was mentioned, it's been about 7 years. These are needed model updates regardless of the concurrency methodology that would be chosen as a policy decision. Parallel with these decisions, Randy Young, who's been introduced, has been working on transportation and parks impact fees and creating new mitigation fees for non-motorized transportation and non-residential parks fees. However, work paused when the city focused on adoption of the central area plan, city reorganization, and a reduction in Parks Department staff. There were a series of public conversations on adopting a simplified concurrency methodology last year at 3 work sessions, and we authorized expenditure of $60,000 to do one of the 3 needed model updates. The work has been mentioned as complete on that model update, and now in the next year or 2, staff and consultants will update our policy, ordinances, and administrative practices in order to align concurrency and merge traffic impact fees with broader city objectives such as the central plan implementation, economic development, and streamlining processes. We initially had a budget of $50,000, but since last September, several priorities have shifted the target completion to the end of this year, so additional funds are needed to complete those tasks based on the target completion date. The bill outlines a number of factors shifting the timeline. As well, however, the shift in schedule provides us with an opportunity to update the models with the most recent best traffic count information, but at an additional cost. So this additional request for $140,000 out of the Capital Improvement Fund is needed to finish certain tasks in a coordinated comprehensive work plan. The models, updating impact fees, creating simplified and merged transportation impact fees, non-motorized mitigation fee, parks impact fee, non-residential parks mitigation fee, technical and policy discussions with staff, etc., facilitating funding strategies of the city's portion of improvements. The Infrastructure Committee met on April 17th to review the bill. The committee was asked for more detail about funding as discussed tonight and as outlined on the slide that Dave showed us. And I believe there's a typo because the bill says $750,000. There's an extra 0 there, but it was $75,000 on the slide. So we've got a total of $140,000 out of the Capital Improvement Fund that's been identified. The committee also asked for specific deliverables in the contract, which staff confirmed there will be, and the committee recommended approval of the funding authorization and asked for it to be placed under tonight's regular business. So with that introduction, I would move to authorize the expenditure up to an additional $140,000 as described in the presentation and bill for transportation computer model updates, simplified concurrency and impact fees, transportation and parks impact fee updates, non-motorized transportation, and non-residential parks mitigation fees.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Councilmember Milligan.
Thank you. I came in a little late in the game in this, but I have had quite a bit of experience with impact fees as we evaluate these things in the Urban Village Development Commission and other arenas. And I was really glad for the thorough attention that the development services have paid to this. We did have questions that were answered at our meeting and then further answered here, which was great. So thank you, staff, and thank you, Mr. Young, for that. I like how this provides clear and well-defined costs for our developers that they can predict and plan on, and clarifies for us so that we don't have things that are nebulous, shall I say. It also, we hope, creates adequate compensation for the impacts that developers create, and it compensates for full array of impacts as we propose to be a complete city with complete streets and parks and all the things that Councilmember Scher has defined. And I especially appreciate the attention to the cost element. That was being the new kid, I certainly didn't want to say, oh yeah, spend more money, but I don't know where. So I was really glad for the extra work you put in for that. Thank you very much. I wanted to say that I'll give my full support for this, and I only wish that we could get it done sooner.
Thank you. Councilmember Scher.
Thank you, Mayor. And just so, in case the point hasn't been driven home enough, so everyone understands, we're not actually voting on a concurrency methodology this evening. We're not actually implementing a concurrency plan. We're not deciding what the level of service in the city will be or how the entire scheme is meant to be set up. So all we're looking at through this bill tonight is appropriating funds to ensure that the model gets updated as is necessary under our code that we haven't done for a very long time. We can then use that data to move forward with the work sessions that were described throughout the course of this year to decide on a policy basis how we want to actually set up our concurrency program. The ultimate goal, though, as I understand it from the presentations, is to move towards a system that allows development to pay its fair share and to allow us to use those funds in a manner that will benefit projects throughout the city. So we have a very long list, and maybe not all residents know this, but it's got about 35, 40, maybe even more items on there, which are major transportation projects throughout the city. Now, we also have much smaller projects that are part of a complete streets fund. Those are things like sidewalks, crosswalks, pedestrian signals. But when we're talking about putting fees towards big projects, we're talking about widening roads. We're talking about major redo of the entire roadway network in certain areas of the city. It's some really big stuff on there. Certain intersection crossings that need improvements. So hopefully through this process we can get to a point where we collect the funds through development and not just use them where impacts throughout the city might have small effects. So we might, normally under our current system, we're adding a turn lane at one end of the city because the model shows that there's, 2 trips added at that end of the city through this development. Well, under this methodology that's going to be proposed to us, and I believe will be recommended, that money that will come in will be able to use and put into a larger pool to actually get some of these bigger projects done and hopefully help the city on a much more systemic basis with our transportation demand problems. So that's really the ultimate direction that we're heading, but there are a lot of policy questions that remain to be seen. Issues about level of service, whether we want the downtown core to have a different level as the rest of the city because of the concentrated development, issues in terms of how the fees are collected and the amounts and so forth. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us on this topic, but this is really just a starting point so that our staff can do what they need to do to get the models updated, which is why I'm supporting the bill and sponsoring the bill too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Winterside.
Thank you. So I have a question about, help me, you've probably already answered this, so I'm going to ask you to maybe repeat yourself. I'm trying to understand what's changed. I'm looking at the presentation from last September on slide 28 from Mr. Young. It says specifically that we will get our concurrency model sooner than previously thought. We'd get it by early 2014. It would be less costly than previously estimated because we would base it on other cities' successes and that no interim update was needed. So now it's not done sooner. It's actually costing more, and I think we have interim. So what we were presented last September, and then the money we authorized to proceed with that, it's back to us. We haven't hit those goals, and it seems like scope has changed as well.
Exactly. And let's talk about what happened and why. My name's Randy Young with Henderson Young & Company, and I've been helping you through this process and hope to help get you to the finish line. Specifically, why are we running longer and why is it costing different than what we talked about? When we started on this process and talked to you last fall, we thought we were going to continue to use the 2007 traffic model to finish the simplified concurrency and the revised mitigation fees. And the opportunity arose as we discovered that you had approved the revision of one of the 3 models to be updated, that work was nearing completion, and we realized that if we could add another 6 months to the process, instead of being done this month or last month in April, if we could finish it later this year, we could use the 2013 or 2014 model that's now being done, all 3 models, as the basis for all of the mitigation fees and all the new concurrency work. We think it will be much more accurate. It will be much more defensible. Just to give you a practical example, if we keep using the 2007 model, and we're supposed to develop an impact fee that collects for new growth's impacts starting in 2013 or 2014 or 2015, how do we think about what happened between 2007 and 2013? If we use the 2000 model, we're forced to plug in estimates of what happened instead of what really happened. By using the new model, we actually get to plug the real traffic growth, the real street improvements in there, and take the blinders off and not pretend that we don't know what actually happened. So the 2014 model, 2013-2014 model that we're going to use puts in the real growth in trips rather than a guesstimate of what it would be. So the additional time is because we're needing to restart some of our analysis now that these new models are coming online. The additional cost is because we had part of that work done under the earlier project based on the 2007 models. I had a list of projects. I was doing some estimated costs for a mitigation fee on that. In fact, that was the basis for my slide to you in September. But now we're going to have probably some modifications to that list, in particular in the multimodal area where you've finished your central Issaquah plan. I didn't have access to what that project list looked like when I was doing my work over a year ago. So I hope that that's speaking to your questions, that there were really important reasons to change both our schedule and to incur these additional costs. I'd close with one comment about the costs. They're higher than what we thought last fall, but they're lower than what you were told at the beginning of this. The original estimates for all of this simplified concurrency was that it was going to be north of $350,000, and we're now bringing that in for under $300,000, probably closer to $250,000.
All right, thank you. And Charlie, if you could, I'd love to hear your answer.
It's very similar to what he said. And really, I second that. As we got into discussions here with the 2007 model, we recognized that carrying that forward was going to require us in very short order, in a year or two, to overhaul that model and update it anyway. And so
let me stop you right there.
Yes.
So last September, we were told we were going to have it this time a 2012 model. You keep mentioning 2007, so that's where my confusion is. And again, I'm looking at the presentation from September. It says in early 2014, we will have a new baseline model based upon 2012 data. So you keep mentioning
okay.
So I'm trying to figure out what changed.
There are multiple models.
Right.
And
okay.
Dave, why don't you give it your shot?
I'll give it a
here.
shot, and then he can fix it.
All right.
But so there are three models. There's the existing conditions model. So today's traffic on today's streets, that's the one that was funded last May that has been done. So when you see 2012, it's 2012, 2013. So that's existing conditions, so that's that. But the other two models are the 2030 growth, so the growth in the future. These are the two that we're asking to be done.
So we didn't identify those last
We
year?
didn't identify those two model runs, I believe, last September.
Okay, so there's a difference. So
That's
there's
the difference.
two more elements to this model that we weren't discussing last year when we approved the initial funds for this study.
Yeah. So that's with this slight delay, now we're able to catch up with these three models. We're going to have up-to-date models of all, so you've got today's traffic on today's streets. We put the 2030 growth on today's streets and find out how many failures, where's all the congestion happening, this growth on today's streets. The third model is the 2030 growth on the 2030 streets, where you identify all the roads to fix to have acceptable service. It's those two models that weren't factored in last September. We're going to go with the older information, like the 2030 growth on the 2007 model. And that's where Randy's saying you got a 2007 model, you're kind of guessing what to bring it up to 2013.
Thanks, David. Let me just say that my recollection is I thought we had a comprehensive plan last fall. And so now I'm learning that it really wasn't comprehensive. And are we going to figure out in 6 months that it's still not I mean, that's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer that. But that's where I'm struggling with this. I don't know if I like the idea of doing complete holistic work. I understand that now with the bike and ped plan being complete, you have other pieces you can work with and consider impact fees that weren't. So that's part of the change in the scope. I think that's one of the changes.
Yes.
And the other one was about non-residential park impact.
Correct.
Now, how is that? How come that's a change? I mean, is that newly available to us, or is that I don't remember us making a policy, or is that, how did that opportunity come into us?
Correct.
Charlie?
You haven't decided yet whether to adopt one, but we were
That's what I
not
thought.
originally contracted to even present you with one.
Okay.
Very few cities have gone down that road, but we now have a methodology that we believe to be very defensible. We completed one last year in Edmonds, for example, and we'd like to develop that methodology, but apply Issaquah's facts to the situation and bring that back to you. If I could mention one other thing that's new that we didn't propose last September, in the discussion about the city's share of how we're going to fund the pieces that the impact fees don't pay for, okay? So, for example, we have a lot of regional traffic in Issaquah, and we can have developers paying for the trips that they put on the road when they build in Issaquah, but when more trips come to Issaquah from outside of the city, we can't make local developers pay for that. So as we explore regional funding sources and partnerships with other agencies, we're also going to be looking to ourselves to see what other sources are available. It happens to be an area of my expertise. I've had some discussions. I've had actually a rather long career of very successful working relationships with your finance director, and she and I have agreed that she has the ability to bring these ideas to you, but she's got a lot on her plate as she is revising your financial practices. And on her recommendation, the team has asked that I be brought to assist you in thinking about these funding strategies. It was on the slides as one of the bullets, for both parks and for transportation. What are other cities doing that you're not doing? How could you do it? What choices do you have? So that's another thing we didn't know about last September.
Okay, so I think this is maybe coming together in my mind. We understand that now we're going to actually complete a comprehensive update of concurrency, all three models. I hope that's the extent of the models. The impact fee work, the scope has grown as well. And it sounds like the other funding alternatives, maybe I'm saying that wrong, you just mentioned it a moment ago, in relationship to our TIP and our capital plan as well for transportation. So that's scope way beyond concurrency.
Correct.
That sounds a lot like, like we're developing a transportation master plan.
Careful, Paul.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, that's, that's a serious comment. Just because concurrency is one element.
Yes.
And it's about mitigating the impacts of new development, but it can't do anything about the existing conditions. And we have a number of projects on our TIP, and we've talked for a while about how we are going to, if and when we're going to be able to do these. So if I'm understanding this correctly, this contract is going to not only deliver a complete set of updated models for concurrency and a new concurrency models, it's going to recommend 4 different impact fees.
Yes.
And also give us some type of strategy for other public funding for projects on our TIP.
Correct.
Okay. That's what's changed since September.
The other thing that's changed that I think is going to put you in a really strong position is the committee's requirement that the contract be about deliverables. I think that's been something else that's been very conceptual in past discussions. When you made a real attempt to revise concurrency the last time, it was in 2010, and there were some good improvements made. It turned out not to be enough. Since then, there's been a lot of conversation. Well, we could do this and we could try that. You had last year, I think, 4 different workshops with 4 different presenters, a couple staff people, a couple consultants. I was one of them, the last one to speak to you. And you have wisely said, put in writing what you're going to get from me, the product, and when you're going to get it. And I'm happy to oblige. We like those kind of contracts, and that's what the committee's asked for. That's what the staff is going to require of me.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you. So, Paul, thank you for those questions. I have the same questions. So following up on the 2 models that are being added, the 2030 growth model on existing streets and the 2030 growth model on 2030 streets, do I have that right?
Yes.
So I'm still a little confused. If in September we had talked about the simplified approach, were those needed then? I mean, do we need those models for the simplified approach?
We need 3 versions. in order to do concurrency and in order to do impact fees. We need a baseline version, current traffic on current roads. We need a growth version that is growth on current roads. And then we need a growth problem-solving version that is growth on a series of roads that have been improved to accommodate that growth. When we did your transportation impact fee the last time, in 2007 or 8, we had 3 versions. We knew in September last year that we were going to need 3 versions. We thought we were going to be using the 2007 3 versions. I've actually got a spreadsheet in which we did that, got it halfway done last year, actually a year and a half ago. But it was based on these old models that thought traffic might be going here and it might be coming from there, but we now have actual traffic counts from the streets that tell us where the traffic really is, and we think it's a much more accurate picture. You know, you have in your agenda package right after the PowerPoint slide, this graphic with the major products and steps in the process. It's those, if you have a color version, it's those, or if not, it's way over at the left, it's those first 3 boxes that are orange on my version. That's where the 3 models are. And we knew we needed 3 models last September, but we didn't think we had the opportunity to get the 3 models all based on 2013 baseline. So part of this contract is to pay for the additional 2 versions.
And the opportunity to get those newest models is, where does that opportunity, why didn't we think we had that opportunity in September?
Well, I can answer that. We start the budget process in May. So by the time we get to September, we're finished with the budget. I mean, it gets presented to council at the first meeting in October. So by September, when council gave us the policy direction on simplified concurrency, there really wasn't an opportunity to go ahead as the administration and amend the budget. So we had, it's pretty typical actually across cities that if you do have some potential plan that you're going to have to make an amendment to the budget, there's a budget amendment process. And so, you know, as we started to think about what would need to be done in the following year, you know, we would anticipate that at some point in the process we would end up spending some money on certain projects, and we will take those funds and amend the budget and then utilize it to complete this project. But I think the overall goal was to complete this project this year.
Okay. So I'm supportive of getting this done because we now are going to have another year that goes by because we were supposed to have this in place first quarter of this year according to the schedule. And another year that goes by, every year that goes by, we have lost significant opportunities to make improvement in our system. So I'm supportive of it. I am still admittedly unclear how we got from late last year to this year, but I will be supporting it because I want this to get done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Are you ready to act on the motion to authorize the expenditure up to an additional $140,000 for transportation computer model updates, simplified concurrency, and impact fees, transportation and parks impact fees updates, non-motorized transportation, and non-residential parks mitigation fees? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion is approved unanimously. Moving now to Agenda Bill 6823, a resolution to ratify GMPC, Growth Management Planning Council, amendment to the county-wide planning policies designating the Central Issaquah Urban Core as an urban center. This is not coming back from a committee, it's coming back from the administration. Just briefly, the summary statement, the King County Council approved and ratified an amendment to the King County county-wide planning policies on March 31st, 2014, which amends the urban growth area map in the 2012 King County county-wide planning policies to add the Central Issaquah Urban Core as an urban center. talking about the ratification process. This amendment is now being considered by the cities in King County in accordance with citywide county planning policy FW1, which is step 9 of a very long process to get us to this point. And the amendments become effective when ratified by ordinance or resolution by at least 30% of the city and county governments representing 70% of the population of King County. Issaquah will have deemed to have ratified the amendment to the countywide planning policies if the City Council, and there are two options, A, approves an ordinance or resolution approving the amendment, or takes no action within 90 days of their adoption by King County. And the 90-day deadline is July 11th, 2014. This was requested by Council Member Milligan to be brought down to regular business. So, Council Member Milligan.
Yeah, let's make a motion and then we can have discussion. So I'd like to move to approve resolution number 2014-06, ratifying an amendment to the King County countywide planning policies, amending the urban growth area map to add the central Issaquah urban core as an urban center.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Council Milligan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I would have voted against this urban growth center application, but I'm going to vote for it. And because that might be a surprise to some people who know me, I'd like to explain and make this course clear and share it with all of you. I've been a consistent supporter of the main tenets of the Central Issaquah Plan, which call for the redevelopment of underutilized suburban spaces, allowing for mixed use and robust commercial development, the green necklace of parks and mobility. All this I wholeheartedly support. And most important to me is the ambition of the Central Issaquah Plan to reduce suburban sprawl by promoting smart growth in Issaquah, make Issaquah complete, compact, and connected. But it's with the urban growth center and the amount of growth planned there that I have been disagreeing. Just to qualify, we would have needed to add 5,000 residential units to the center designated area, which in my math, because I live in Issaquah Highlands, would be like putting 1.5 Issaquah Highlandses in the western third of Issaquah. But our plan goes beyond, and we intend to add 7,000 residential units. This would result in a 50% increase in our population by 2040, coming just from the growth center. Not to mention, we already have growth planned in Issaquah Highlands and in Lakeside. This represents a significant increase over what King County would forecast for all of King County, and so why should we grow so much more? I realize that this is a question that's been thoroughly reviewed by this body and others in the city of Issaquah, and this, let's call it a train, has left the station, and the Urban Growth Center has already been wholeheartedly supported. I can't change its course, so what can I do as a member of the City Issaquah Council to further this journey? Well, I've decided that I can still support the big picture of the Central Issaquah Plan. Number one, most important to me, is developing a downtown where citizens can live, play, and work. While we love the idea of living in Issaquah, and some love working elsewhere and riding a train there, that to me doesn't signify a complete city. So I'd like to build upon the groundwork laid by our great employers such as Issaquah's Swedish Hospital, Costco, Sanmar, and others. Secondly, to reduce suburban sprawl. Everybody here knows that growth in Issaquah doesn't by itself prevent suburban sprawl. While we implement the Central Issaquah Plan and the Urban Growth Center, I'd like Issaquah to build on its leadership and transfer of development rights. Truly, the only way to prevent suburban sprawl is to remove development rights from rural areas. Growing cities like Issaquah provide a marketplace that can compensate rural landowners for their development rights by moving those development rights into the city. Issaquah Highlands is a perfect example of this. And it wasn't lost on me, perhaps the irony that she lives in Issaquah Highlands. How could she be against fast and dense growth? Well, sometimes growth can be a valuable tool, and Issaquah Highlands is a perfect example. 3/4 of our land is set aside as open space and parks, and the development rights were transferred to the central area to be developed in a consolidated, smart growth way. So I hope I'll have my fellow council members' support in these objectives. Going forward, I intend to join this body in support of the urban growth area designation as part of the Central Issaquah Plan. Opposing it wouldn't be productive, but in joining the program, perhaps I could be more helpful in these two objectives: encouraging quality job growth in Issaquah and reducing suburban sprawl regionally. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, President, for this opportunity.
Other questions or discussion? Councilmember Sheriff.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to take this opportunity. I've talked with a lot of folks in the community about why I supported the Central Issaquah Plan. And I also want to talk about why I support the Urban Growth Center designation. Growth is coming. Change is coming. I would love for our city to look the way that it does in perpetuity. We have a great city. I think we have a great vision. I like the way the city looked in the late 80s when I first came to this area, and I like the way that it looks now, and it doesn't look anything like it did in the late 80s. So the change is going to happen whether we like it or not. The United Nations estimates that in 2008, for the first time in history, more than half of the world's population is now living in towns and cities. And that number is expected to swell by 2030 to almost 5 billion individuals. Now, 6 o'clock on Front Street South or SSR 900 South, you might think we've got most of that 5 billion, but it's not all us. But we do have a pretty significant growth curve that we've experienced over the last 12 to 15 years. Our population in 2000 was about 11,000, and now we're north of 30, I think even over 35. And that's just in a 12-year span. I think 187% was the number, and made us the fastest or one of the fastest growing cities in all of the state of Washington. So whether we have a central area plan in place, which we didn't for the last 12 years, whether we have an urban growth center designation in place, which we didn't for the last 12 years, people still came to Issaquah because it's a great community. People want to work here. People want to live here. People want to shop here. And that's all going to happen, and that's going to continue to increase whether we do these things or not. And the reason I supported the Central Issaquah Plan is because it outlined a definitive vision for how that growth is supposed to occur, so that we don't end up with sprawl, so that we don't end up with haphazard shopping centers and retail developments with islands of parking and seas of asphalt across the city as we've had for a number of years. It really is a targeted, focused, dense type of central development in the city. And so that's the same reason I support the Urban Growth Center designation. When you look at the PSRC's website, it talks about what is an urban center, and it says it's a planning district with a mix of housing, employment, commercial, and cultural amenities in a compact form. They support transit, walking, and cycling. They are focal points of vibrant city life and activity, as well as strategic locations for accommodating a significant share of future population and employment growth. Smaller cities may have one center, such as a downtown core, while larger cities may have multiple unique centers. That basically encapsulates our central area plan right there in the PSRC definition of an urban center. So it goes hand in hand, this designation, with all the hard work and planning we spent many years doing already. And, you know, I want to say the one negative in all of this that comes to mind, and I think I talked about it when we were doing the Central Issaquah planning, is I'm still not convinced that we have a really clear roadmap on how to get from here to there. And I've said this before, that I think a lot of folks think we're going to wake up one day and it's going to be 2030 or 2050 and we're going to have this beautiful compact mixed-use downtown core. Well, that doesn't happen overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. You've got to work for the next 10, 15, 20 years to get us there. And we've taken steps to move in that direction. But I'm still not sure we actually have a roadmap of how we're going to reach housing targets, how we're going to provide the infrastructure for that central area core or for this urban center designation. So I didn't make it a goal this year, but I would call upon you as colleagues in the administration to start really thinking about that process, because one development off Gilman, okay, that's a start. Maybe another developer will want to come in and do some revitalization, redevelopment, but that's piecemeal. I don't know how we get from A to B other than the hope that potentially we're going to wake up one day and we'll be at B. And that's just not how it's going to happen. We've got to have a way to develop and get to that end result goal. And that applies not just to the central area plan, it applies to a lot of our transportation projects as well. So I want to see the chain to get from A to B at some point here, hopefully in the next couple of years. But I support this bill, and I trust that this will all work out for the best for our community. Thank you.
Councilmember Marks.
I want to echo Councilmember Scher's statement that change is coming. You know, we can manage that change, or that change can be done to us. I think that the projections for employment growth, back up a step, one of the reasons why I supported the central Issaquah plan in the beginning and support urban center designation, and we'll be supporting this bill, is the projections are something on the order of 20 to 30,000 jobs will be coming by 2030. And if you look at that, and you look at the fact that I-90 can carry about 6,000 cars an hour, you ask yourself, what's that going to look like for us to have all those additional jobs? And you put on top of that the fact that the reason I first got involved in running for council 5 years ago was workforce housing and living wage jobs. The idea that, and I've said it before and say it again, the folks who live here have a hard time finding jobs here, and the folks who work here can't afford to live here. And I believe that the Central Issaquah Plan and urban center designation is a step in the right direction to try to build that capacity to understand as the change comes, to give us some tools by which we can manage that growth. I think that it's a living process. I think we're starting to see some development that's coming about as a result of the regulatory environment that we're putting in, and it's right and proper to review that and tweak those knobs as we go forward in this continuing effort to build a real coherent and more compact city out here on the east side. So for all those reasons, I'll be supporting it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or discussion? Seeing none then, are you ready to vote? All those in favor of approving resolution number 2014-06, ratifying an amendment to the King County countywide planning processes, amending the urban growth area map to add the central Issaquah urban core as an urban center, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That resolution carries unanimously. Moving now to our final action. Is there anyone for good of the order? Seeing none then, there's no executive session. We are adjourned at 8:37.